So I've decided to do a video on replacing the LCD digitizer on a iPhone 5S, I believe what this is. And I bought it broken because I didn't want to spend a whole lot of money on it, basically using it for just to play games on and stuff, connected to the Wi-Fi at home. And I got one of these cool VR headsets. That you, if I can open it, just put the phone in there, like so, and then you use the VR apps. It's pretty cool. Kids dig it. So it's cheap entertainment. So that was one of the main reasons. I figured, well, I'll buy the broken phone. You know, otherwise it works good. And you can even use the screen, but it's got the cracks all in it. So I'm going to replace that. I think it was about 15 bucks for a replacement digitizer LCD assembly. Now you can buy the digitizer separate from the LCD, but there's a certain type of adhesive that's used to put the two together, and I think it uses ultraviolet light to get the adhesive to solidify, and you can heat this stuff up with a heat gun or even a hair dryer to try to pry the stuff up, but it's a real pain, and it's just easier to just buy the assembly. Like I said, I think it's about 15 bucks for the whole assembly, so it's easier to do it that way. So that's what we'll do. So starting off, what we'll do is we've got two tiny screws here at the bottom of the phone near the charging port. We're going to take those out, and that'll be step one. And then we're going to take and use a suction cup toward the bottom here, and we're going to help pry this top screen off from the frame. So that's where we're going to. And what we're going to use to take those two screws out is a very tiny hex head screwdriver. And you can buy these little phone screen replacement kits that pretty much have everything you need: the suction cup, little pry bars, and screwdrivers and everything. Pretty cheap, so it's a good thing to have if you're going to do this kind of stuff. But that's what we're going to use to take these two screws out. Now you got to be very careful when you are taking these screws out. As you can see, those are very, very tiny. And what I'm using to keep track of them is just a refrigerator magnet. Screws will stick to it, so it'll be easy to lose those things. As you can tell, they are super small. So I'm gonna pull the second screw out, and then I can pry up this screen. Okay, so the suction cup that came with the kit is actually garbage. It doesn't work very well. It doesn't create a very well suction to try to pull that up with. So what I've decided to do was carefully use my tweezers to try to get up under there and start pulling it loose. And I've got some guitar picks. If you're a guitar player, you'll have plenty of these. They work good. Try to help and just work my way around to break it free. There's probably dust, debris, whatever, when the phone got smashed. It's kind of lodged in there, so I'm going to do that and work my way around. And you always want to lift it up from the bottom, because the LCD and the digitizer ribbon cables are at the top. So you want to open it up this way, so that try to open it up on the front side, the top side, it's going to damage those cables. So that's what we're going to do now. And I got it started. So I'm just going to work my way around to free it up. Okay, so I've got this freed up to where I can open it up. And you want to be very careful. I'm going to show you just why. Because when you're lifting this up, you see that ribbon cable in there for your home button. If you just pull that thing up, you're going to break that ribbon cable and you'll be in trouble. So then you'll have to get you a replacement ribbon cable. So what I have to do is detach the ribbon cable. They usually just plug in and from the phone, and then I can lift this up the rest of the way. So you definitely want to be very careful. So we'll disconnect that so we can open it up the rest of the way. So I've got that ribbon cable disconnected, and this stuff is so tiny. You really got to be careful, as you can see. And you want to use one of these plastic, I think you call them spongers or something, so you can just pry up. And what I did was I pried up this little clip that covers the ribbon cable connector, and so that I could unplug that ribbon cable. And it's a very tiny connection. Connects right there. So I'm going to open this up. See the inside. And your ribbon cable for your LCD digitizer is on the top. So you want to be careful with that. This little bracket here, you have 4 screws that we'll have to take off that cover, and then we can disconnect the ribbon cables for the digitizer and the LCD screen. So we'll do that next. Alright, so I pulled that cover off, and that's it right there, so that I can get to these ribbon cables here. And they got some padding that's covering them up right there. So I'll just pull that off. And I should be able to lay this down so that I don't have to hold that up. So that should be good. And these screws are even smaller than the first 2 screws that we took off, so it's definitely good to use some sort of magnet to so you don't lose them. And again, we're going to want to use one of these plastic tools to pry, and it's like some kind of rubber cover here that this is on. So we'll take this off, and the ribbon cable just unplugs basically. So, and you can kind of see the ribbon cable for the home button, if I can get it to show up. Yeah, see, there's the plug for that, and then it just plugs in right there. So everything pretty much just plugs in. So it's pretty easy, but it's very tiny. Everything's real small, so you have to be very careful. And it's makes it even harder when you got big hands, big fat fingers trying to get in there and do that stuff. So we're gonna disconnect these cables now. And like I said, this almost seems like weather stripping material. And we'll just pry that stuff up, and then we can disconnect the ribbon cables, and then we'll have the thing, the LCD digitizer assembly completely disconnected, and then we'll have to take this frame off as well. So we'll do that after we disconnect the cable. Okay, so I've disconnected one of the ribbon cables. That's the top one. So now I'm gonna gently pry up this last one here, and just be careful, because everything is small and fragile. There we go. So we got that one disconnected now. And I think we got one more tiny one right here to disconnect. And keep in mind that when you buy this replacement, it doesn't come with the camera, it doesn't come with the home button or all that assembly. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to take all this, the camera apart, the home button assembly, because you're going to have to reuse that on the new screen LCD assembly. So keep that in mind, that we're almost done, but we still got to take these off and put those, just transfer them to the new assembly. So I'm going to disconnect this last ribbon cable, and then this will be free, and then we can take these, the camera and the home button assembly apart, so that we can start putting the phone back together. Now, before you go all gung-ho, just remember that pay attention, because this back plate's got to come off. The camera assembly has to come off, and the home button assembly has to come off. But you need to take this camera assembly bracket off first before you take this back plate off. So we're going to do that now, and it's going to be the tiny Phillips head screwdrivers. You got 2 screws here that we're going to disconnect, and we'll pop that up, and everything, like I said, everything disconnects, and you just got to be very careful because they're very small connections. So just want to take your time and make sure you don't damage anything in the process. Okay, so I've taken off the bracket for the camera, and I've easily lifted off the camera, and you see these contacts here, and they just connect right here on these contacts. So it just basically flips over, and that's where your connection is there. So that's the camera, and we're going to set that aside, and then we're going to work our way down to the home button. But I'll probably take this back plate off first. So, okay, so actually I was mistaken. This is your flash. Okay, your camera is here, so this will be the next thing to take off. So we've taken the flash off. We got to set that aside because we're going to have to put that back on. And we're going to take the camera off. Now it's basically connected with a ribbon cable, and then we'll pull that off and take that off, and then we'll get this back plate off. All right, so I've got the camera free. I'm a little concerned. I had to pry up all this, which came up pretty good. Just got to do it very gently. But one thing I noticed, and it was this way when I took the phone apart first, is this ribbon cable here that's connected to the back plate for the camera. I'm not sure if that's going to be a problem or not, but that was pre-existing. So of course I'm not really going to use the camera on this thing anyway, so for me it's not that big of a deal. So I'm not going to worry too much about that, but you can see how it looks like a piece of it might have gotten severed. I don't know if anybody's ever taken this thing apart before or not, but it would lead me to believe that they probably have. So you got to be very careful. These ribbon cables are very delicate. So that's that. Now we're going to take this back plate off, and we've got, I think there's about 4 screws. I think you got 2 screws on each side. You've got this screw here, and if I flip it around, you've got a screw there, and actually it's, you can see it's actually missing a screw. So somebody has taken this part apart before, because that screw didn't get put back. So it would appear that somebody has taken this apart before, but no big deal. The main function that I want it for works, so So that's good. So we're going to take this back plate off, and then we will disconnect the home button assembly ribbon cable and the home button itself to start putting it on the new digitizer LCD assembly. So I've got all the screws out, and I'm about ready to pry this back plate off. And the reason why you want to take your time, because I didn't realize that this screw, if you look closely, is holding this down over here at the home button. So I need to take this screw off before I take this off. So you always want to take your time and check everything out before you go pulling stuff apart, because a lot of times you might miss something, and you could damage something if you don't have everything disconnected first. So I got to take this screw off for the home button as well, so that I can take this back plate off. Okay, so I've taken the back plate off, and I got my little buddy here watching me. Hey, buddy. Richard, what you doing? What you got there? Is that Batman?
Yeah.
Show me Batman. Can I see? Don't touch. Can I see Batman? Can I see it? You got Batman? Is that Batman? Let me see. This dude loves Batman. So anyway, so I took the plate off, and I took the small bracket for the home button off as well. And you got to be careful, because this ribbon cable was folded down, and you know, you got another screw right there, and a screw that was there that holds the bracket in. So you always, another reason why you want to take your time, and so that you don't miss a screw when you go to pull something off and you break it. So now I'm going to remove this home button, and after that we can start putting everything together on the new assembly and start putting the phone back together. So it's a few different parts and pieces that you got to keep track of, but if you take your time, and you know, shouldn't be that big of a deal to keep track of everything, where everything goes, and get everything put back together. So.